Welcome to the line, Levi.
It's great to be here.
Well, I appreciate it. So we're here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, at the corporate headquarters, correct?
Yep.
Of Quarry Building Group, and they have a pretty rich heritage out of the Lancaster County area. And I'm here with Levi King. What is your title here at the company?
My title is COO.
Okay.
Which for our size business just means wearing a lot of different hats. So.
Oh my. Well, so we're sitting here. Tell us a little bit about where we are, this building, what it is. It's kind of significant for you guys in your history and a big part of what you do. If you're listening, then you're missing out on this. But we're sitting in like your main entry here, and there's a lot of timber structure around us, which it's all fake, right? It's not like real timber work, right? It's faux timber work.
No, it's real timber work, Josh.
So let's hear about that.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long time coming. We moved to this facility 2.5 years ago now. And prior to that, we bounced around between metal warehouses and buildings that did not represent our work. And it's hard to find good real estate here in Lancaster County.
Yeah, I do know about that.
So this property came up, and it was on the market for 20 years, not 20 years. It was on the market for quite a few years. First sold in 2008 timeframe, I believe.
Okay.
It was subdivided from the main farm. It's 5 acres here along Lincoln Highway. And yeah, we had the opportunity to previous businesses had put offers in and realized that the zoning was not very favorable, which is why, even though the buildings are beautiful, it was still empty and really vacant for the last 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And so just had the right timing at a point when it's back on the market, put an offer in, kind of realized what we're up against, and decided to give it a go, and had a lot of great neighbors that were very much in favor of what we wanted to do, which was really the key to it all.
Why don't you talk about that a little bit? Tell us for those who aren't able to visualize this and see it, talk about what it is that you wanted to do here, because we're sitting on a property that, as he's describing it, I would say this is like an old farmhouse, which currently is like an old farmhouse on steroids. And then there's a beautiful barn there, and then another barn. So talk about the property and what you guys did here and what your goal was.
Sure. So the history is this property was purchased in the 1800s by Joseph Espenshade, and he was a very prominent business owner in the area, and it's actually his tenant farm. The family farm is just across the fields here, which is still in the family trust today, which is really neat. So, but this is a tenant farm, and he did want to make a statement with it. He wanted to make sure that, the buildings are done right and, last a long time, and so he was very successful with that. So Joseph sold it to an Amish family in the early 1900s, and it was used as a dairy farm for the last, most of the 20th century. And then once the traffic became too much for the family that was here, they decided to subdivide and build a new set of buildings on the other end of the property. And so the 5 acres that was subdivided became a little bit unusable. It wasn't big enough to really be used for ag, but still zoned for agricultural. But the township wouldn't allow commercial business to move here, which is the reason why it was vacant for so many years. And we felt like it would be a good fit for us, and that really the key was if ours was a special exception use for the property, but our vision for it was not to turn it into an ugly commercial metal building warehouse type of setup, but rather to actually build something that represents the Lancaster County community, our agricultural history, and something that represents our brand, which we do a lot of more old world craftsmanship, more artisan style of construction. And
so can I interrupt you there? Because you said a statement here that I don't want to gloss over, because, at Blackline, our vision is to lift the view of the skilled trades. And you made a statement there about old world craftsmanship. What is that? Help explain to me and our listeners what that means. What are you talking about when you say that? Like I'm here and I can visualize some of it. I think I'm not a carpenter by trade, so I'm going to butcher this, but am I looking at a lot of mortise and tenon work?
You are, yes.
Okay.
That's a big part of it is
Okay.
a lot of heavy timber. We love working with wood. And, when you study the old buildings that we
Yeah.
have here in the U.S., there's so many of them that
Yeah.
are built in the 1700s that are still standing today that are built out of wood,
Yeah.
and, a lot of mortise and tenon joinery. And the history that we have in this region of really good craftsmanship, a lot of the old Pennsylvania bank barns,
Oh, yeah.
really incredible. I mean, it's just, a lot of times nowadays you hear people talk about, when they think about building something that lasts, well, just build it out of concrete, Wood's not going to last.
Yeah.
But I disagree with that. I mean, the barn that we have it's sort of in front of us was built in 1911. And when we purchased it, still had the original slate roof, the original wood siding,
Wow.
the original structure, and had been altered for the dairy operation, but the bones were still original with very little work done to it,
Wow.
which is just incredible.
That
And
is incredible.
a testament to how Joseph designed it and built it right. But I think so. That old world craftsmanship, that skill set of being able to build something like that, where it's a craft that gets passed on and learned by experience by more of an apprentice,
Yeah.
apprenticeship approach, that's not as common anymore.
No.
We have the privilege of growing up with it, where we grew up around it. We grew up growing the barn raisings and learning from at a very young age how that is done.
Do you mind, actually, you mentioned something there, and I come from Lancaster County, so I
Yeah.
know what you mean when you say I grew up with barn raisings. Do you mind if we go into your
Sure.
your origins a little bit?
Yeah.
So when you say that, I guess for those that are listening, we're here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Explain to those who might be listening, and I'm wanting you to say it, not me, but what did you grow up in?
Yes.
Were you driving cars?
We were not.
Okay.
We grew up. We grew up Amish, and if you're thinking Lancaster County, or that might be what comes to mind anyway. But we did grow up in the Amish community, very prevalent here in Lancaster.
Yeah.
And my family has been here since 1740s when they moved from Germany on my dad's side, moved from Germany, settled in Berks County.
Levi,
and
that's
then-
impressive. My family has not been here that long. So, yeah.
Yeah. And there's a rich history within the Amish community of working with your hands, of the trades.
Yes.
Not as the trades more recent, it used to be more farming, but farming, there's a lot of
There's a lot of trade involved in that,
there's a
for
lot
sure.
of trade involved with that.
Yeah.
And I think farmers are some of the most creative people there are. And I had the privilege of growing up with that, where, you learn. We had sort of an old McDonald farm growing up. And I'll just take a step back too and say, grew up in a family of 12. So big family, which is also common here in Lancaster. And I think one of the blessings that came out of growing up in such a large family is our parents could not control 12 kids. And
I
as you
love
can
your
imagine-
honesty with that. Our parents could not control 12 kids.
when I think about some of the things that we did, oh my gosh, we explored places we should not have explored, and we actually grew up next to an old stone quarry.
Oh, my word.
And I don't want to incriminate myself here, but
Yeah.
we certainly trespassed on weekends when it wasn't in operation and things that
Yeah.
And that is the origination. That's where the name came from.
Really?
Quarry Views. We literally started our business out of the family home. It was a 3-acre property, and we started the business out of there. We were not the creative type, so we're like, well, what's quite literally in front of us, Quarry View. So that's the history behind the name. But yeah, so we definitely a family of 12. My dad started out as a farmer, and
I recently just read a statistic that out of the different, career paths or careers that you might have, there was a stat out that talked about, what jobs are people most happiest in. And this was really fascinating. I didn't realize that we were going to go down this road today, but I just read this either this morning or yesterday, that the statistics are out that farmers are some of the most happy people in their job. So clearly, it was not the farming that I did as a summer job for an Amishman up the road from me, because I was not happy. But yeah,
I experienced that as well. I had to work for my uncle, and I hated it. Sorry, Uncle John, if you're listening, but I did hate it. He'll never listen to it because he's Amish. But so we had a small farm, and I was born on a dairy farm till I was 4 years old. So my dad started out as a dairy farmer, and had a farming accident, broke his back, got gored by a bull, and then from there sold the farm and moved to like an old McDonald farm. And
what is? I'm really ignorant. What is an old McDonald farm? I just got the song playing in my head.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, basically, we had cows, chickens, pigeons, rabbits, guinea pigs. You know, on a small scale, but we just had a lot of different animals.
Yeah.
Horses were our transportation. Had a lot of different animals that we would take care of as kids. But I did just financially from my parents. My dad never really got any kind of momentum with his career, if you will, after that. And so we grew up in poverty. We really, my mother is amazing, and what she did with the little that she had, it now, as having grown up a little bit, it still amazes me what she did with what she had. And but it did mark us as kids. And I think especially my older brother Ben, who's our CEO, him probably the most out of the family. It really marked him, and he had a resolve from a very young age to not repeat that cycle and to do something different. Yeah. And he was always very entrepreneurial, which I did. One of the benefits, like I was saying earlier, with growing up in a large family, our parents couldn't control us. And it did foster a very entrepreneurial spirit, because generally if you leave kids without technology and you put them outside, their imaginations go wild. And that's what we had.
You're talking about my childhood, man. Yeah.
And when I think about the current generation that grows up in front of screens, too many of them, it makes me sad, when you see that, when they literally, if parents rely on that as their entertainment, they miss out on developing that creative side, the critical thinking skills that you develop by just making something out of dirt and wood or whatever you have outside, building dams in the creek, like such simple things, but I think how it develops.
It really cultivates imagination.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, my mom tells a story of we were doing an addition to our house, and I grew up the son of a carpenter. I don't mean Jesus, but that too. But my father was a carpenter, and so we would always we were building an addition, which meant my dad was building the addition. So a buddy, you didn't rent backhoes back then, but a buddy with a backhoe came, and I'm pretty sure it was unsafe, but dug this big hole. So there was this huge pile of dirt in the backyard for an entire summer. Yeah. And my mom said I just played in that all summer long. Right. And it cultivates imagination and thought and all that stuff. So yeah,
it really does. And we did have a small wood shop at home too, which actually was very instrumental in developing a love for just building things. And at a age that was way too young, started using skill saws and jigsaws. And I remember for school projects, we would have these craft projects. I would built these little covered bridges, birdhouses, and sold them. And it was just the most satisfying thing ever. But it did start, like when I look back, that's really when it started, the love for construction and building. Yeah. And then got my first construction job when I was 14, started working on a crew.
So let's just rewind here. When you were 14, and I don't want to out you here, Levi, but you're not old. So for those of you who are listening, it wasn't that long ago, but that's something unique to your story. So that's pretty impressive. So yeah, you're 14 years old, and you had a real job. When I was 14, I was delivering newspapers. So
it's really a blessing.
I agree.
Starting young, and I think, and each to his own for sure, as far as how you start your career. Some folks like the approach of traveling in their 20s and enjoying the world, and nothing wrong with that, but you'll live with the consequences of that. Mm-hmm. And there is a tremendous value with starting at a younger age, making your mistakes when you can. Yeah. You don't have a family to support, and learning a trade, learning a skill, and obviously certain trades and certain professions, it makes sense to go to college, and that's a great option as well. But there is certainly a lot of potential going down the route of starting the trades young, and learning it, and you pick it up so quickly as well when
Yeah.
you're younger.
Yeah.
So yes,
Well, and when you're younger too, especially in construction, things don't ache as much when you get home at the end of the day when you're younger.
oh, that is so true.
Yeah.
Now scrambling or climbing walls and beams and all that stuff when you're
Yeah.
20 is very different than when you're
Oh my, yes.
40 and 50. Yeah.
I can remember throwing a piece of 4-inch rigid over my shoulder and carrying it, from the job trailer into the job. Matter of fact, we were unloading a trailer of it, and I was like, "Well, I'm going to carry 2." And first of all, stupid.
Yeah.
Second of all, I definitely couldn't even carry 1 today on my shoulder. There's no doubt about it. Well, if I would, it would be totally a pride thing, and I'd pay for it for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
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 So.
Yeah. So then my brother Ben and I worked for the same company for about 3 years. When I was 17, he was 20. Dad was between jobs, and he always wanted to do something with his boys, and he wanted to start a business with us. He didn't have the construction experience we did at that point, but he did help us just get it off the ground. This is 2008.
Okay.
So we were pretty oblivious to what was happening in the economy, and
That was probably a good thing. I don't know that it helped a lot of us to be aware.
Right. Yeah. So, but we started in June of 2008, and started out with just saw an ad in the Lancaster Farming or whatever it was. Said a general contractor out of New Jersey said, "Hey, looking for subcontractors. Have worked for like 2 years. He had all kinds of contracts lined up, and we're like, this is kind of a fail-safe thing to do. Let's just go, buy a truck or lease a truck, get some tools." And
I love the total lack of fear. Like, let's just go do it. Like, we're just going to do it. Like, I love that. Yeah.
which, I think it goes back to how I grew up, not being governed too much by my parents, and in some cases it's even a weakness. I'd say for all of us, all my brothers too, where we have this sense of sometimes almost arrogance that we can do something, and sometimes an unwarranted sense of confidence that, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But I think it does come back to how we grew up, where we're just given sort of a blank. We weren't governed as much, and just were able to, think for ourselves. And
one of my favorite quotes is by President Teddy Roosevelt, who also is one of my favorite presidents, by the way. But there's a quote hanging in one of our conference rooms, and it says, don't. Someone asks you to do a job, say yes, you can do that job, and then go figure out how to do it. Like, and don't be like, no, I can't. Yes, we can do that, and then go figure out how to do it. So
that was very much the beginning of our business.
Yeah.
Like, we'd say, yes, we can do it, and then come back to the office like, how the heck are we going to get that
I
done?
think that's some of the best. The interesting thing about that, especially in first generation businesses, which I think are some of the coolest, because I love building things. I mean, I would rather build 100 things than finish one, but that's just me. But you have that. I think you learn so much more in those beginning stages in situations like that than you do by as a business grows. It gets more procedures, it gets more safeties, and those things are appropriate. But there's something that the knowledge of the leadership team that has been through that beginning. Those are the things. It's almost like, my dad was a soldier, and he served in combat. And I would ask him questions when I was young about that. And he would say, well, I don't know how to explain that to you. Like, I had experienced that. And then I would watch him talk with other people who had experienced that with him. And they could talk and handle things and deal with things in a way that I couldn't comprehend. And I think that's some of, especially founders and businesses where you're going through that in that beginning stage like that, facing those things together, that's experience that you really have to work at sharing with teams as you grow, because it's essentially you've been to the battlefield and you have that experience. And I think it's you can't get it any other way. And it's really, really valuable.
Right.
So
that's so true. Yeah.
So before we keep going, I want to ask you a question, and I also want to ask the team a question. Hey, he would love a water, and there's a water bottle over there for him. It looks like this. Would you grab that?
Perfect.
So this is just a new thing. Blackline, we usually give out coffee mugs, but being that is today like the hottest day of the year so far?
It sure seems like it.
My truck said 103. So Austin, is there some water? Do you want some water? Yeah, we're gonna put some water in it. There's a bottle over there. So, but while he's doing that, so we usually give out coffee mugs. We thought today would be a great day to bring out our the line water jugs from Yeti.
That's a sweet gift.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
I love Yeti. I'm a huge Yeti fan. So.
Me too. I have way too many of them,
Yeah.
which that's what my wife says, but I say no. Because, hey, you're going somewhere, you want to fill a couple of Yetis? I have them. So, yeah.
And I'm sure quite a few of yours have vanished as well. Thank you.
So what is a tool or a piece of gear that you cannot live without? Clearly, the line water bottle is the first thing. So obviously the second thing.
Yeah.
What is a tool or a piece of gear that you can't live without?
Well, I would say in my role, I'm a little bit of a spreadsheet nerd today.
Wow.
I still love swing and hammer, but I don't get to do that very much.
Yeah.
And we have an incredible team that is now way more talented than I ever was. And but in my role, I love spreadsheets, and people make fun of spreadsheets, and there's always advertisements about, oh, this platform replaces all your spreadsheets and all that. But man, spreadsheets just are so much fun.
Well, I think you have to work with what makes sense to
Yeah.
you. I mean, our estimators in our electrical company, they operate off of new softwares and things like that. And if I'm ever involved in a bid or a project, I can't operate that stuff. I don't operate that. And I still operate the old school way that I learned it. And that works.
Yeah.
And so if you know what works for you, I think that totally makes sense. So
Right.
your one thing is spreadsheets.
Yeah, I mean that's what comes to mind. I'm sure as I get back and listen. To
Oh
this,
no,
I'm
you will
gonna
be
like,
you will be forever known as the spreadsheet guy. Yes. So
And I'm not the most talented when it comes to actually building spreadsheets. Some of our team is. I mean, they're way more talented than I am. But I like it because it's very adaptable. And
Yeah.
in our world, we need flexibility, and we're not doing cookie cutter projects. So it's so challenging to have a platform that's too locked in, where you can't adapt it to different projects. So.
Well, and spreadsheets are phenomenal at showing you the whole picture in a way
Yeah.
that you would lose data
Yeah.
if you didn't have the ability to utilize that spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to track everything, especially in construction. That is, I probably shouldn't say this, but that's the way that I learned how to tighten my bids, how to make sure that we're making profit, is because we would track things in detail. Then I could go back when we did it wrong and be like, oh, this is where we did it wrong. Don't want to do that again.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's so true. And we certainly did not do that the first couple of years. And then after a while, you start realizing that where's all the money going, And then start realizing that, you can't fix things if you don't know what to fix.
Boy,
And
that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So, question for you, since you talk about swinging a hammer, do you have a specific hammer that you like, or just one with a handle?
At this point, I mean, it's been too many years since I have. I mean, I know.
I mean, there's a hammer on your logo, man. So you got to have an opinion about a hammer.
That's a great. I mean, I honestly don't. I probably should have, but I know the titanium ones were always all the rage.
Yeah.
But I never actually had a titanium hammer. I'm just kind of like a little bit old school. Like, I'm not going to make it easy. Like, my wrists get stronger if I have a heavier hammer.
Old school or stubborn. It depends on what you want to call it. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But I mean, growth comes from doing things that are hard. So
Boy, that's the truth.
When you buy a lighter hammer, it means you just get weaker, and
Yeah. Yeah.
no, it's been. I think the one I have now is, everybody probably would make fun of me when I bring it out. It's not. It's just a basic whatever. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So, Quarry View Building Group, we've talked a lot about your origins. We've talked about what you guys do. We talked about how you love spreadsheets, which is totally going to be the hottest part of the podcast. People are going to go nuts over that. That was sarcasm. But tell us Well, we talked about Old World and whatnot, but talk about Quarry View Building Group and the projects that you guys are doing. Like, walk us through some of those projects that you're doing. And while this is your headquarters, you guys are expanding into other states. Like,
Yeah.
I talked with you, I think, I don't know if it was a year ago now or not, but you guys were expanding then, and your work, it's interesting to me, your work is in high demand.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
So, yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, we started out with building pole barns. That's the work as a subcontractor.
Yeah.
2008, and we pretty quickly knew that's not where we wanted to stay. That's a very cutthroat environment, and
Yeah.
there's just it doesn't take much talent to build a pole barn. No offense, but it's basic structures, no trim carpentry really. So, but we did that well for a couple of years, and then when the fall of 2008 is when the bottom dropped out of the economy.
Yeah.
And the general contractor that had promised us work for 2 years called with about 6 weeks notice and said, hey, you finish this project, that's all I have. All my contracts are getting canceled.
Wow.
And it was a little bit of a panic mode for us.
Yeah,
We had
I would think so.
we had a family of 12. At that point, my dad was helping us still. And we had a family of 12 that was relying on that business income. And we had no work lined up. We had no advertising. We had nothing. And
So you guys just started doing the work and didn't get into that aspect of the business yet.
right, we
Okay.
had subcontract work, and it
Yeah.
was just he was like, "Hey, go to this place," and we'd show up and do the work and do a good job. So when that happened, my brother ran a small mailbox markets ad in the Lancaster farming, which if anybody that knows the mailbox markets, it's not really intended for advertising really.
Yeah.
But there's a gentleman out of Maryland, Robert Knox, that's a so great friend of ours today, and he saw
Really
the ad.
cool name, Robert Knox.
Yeah.
That sounds like, yeah.
He saw the ad and called us.
I
And
feel
this
like
is-
that's the kind of guy that goes to the Kentucky Derby or something like that. But anyway,
I don't know if he would.
yeah.
He's a dairy farmer,
Okay.
or he was. He might be retired now, but he had a beautiful gambrel barn that needed a new roof. And today that would be a small project for us, but back then this was a huge undertaking, and we had no experience. There was
Yeah.
no way he should have hired us, and he knew it. Because we showed up. I mean, I was 17. Ben was 20. We're kids, and we show up and we gave him a bid, and it might have been like, I don't know, 30, maybe $50,000 to $60,000, but it should have been it'd be like $5 million today. And he decided to give us a shot, and it saved our business. That
Yeah.
project was enough to sustain us to start getting some traction. But the first, like 2008 to 2010, was still, we had to get pretty scrappy. I mean, we
Yeah.
would do anything.
Yeah.
Just the crappiest jobs you can imagine.
Yeah.
Roof repairs on nasty old buildings, and just doing whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And it, in hindsight, that was an incredible blessing to have that start, because we learned how to be frugal,
Yeah.
learned how to make things work, and we just learned how to do what it takes. Sometimes as entrepreneurs or people that are starting out, they immediately want to buy all the nice stuff and the nice equipment and all the things, and just follow the sort of the fancy way.
Yeah.
But I think something as if you're starting a business, that's a mentality that will take you a long way. Is just learning to do what it takes,
Yeah.
and to not let your pride get in the way of sometimes of having to just do what you have in front of you. And so it was
At Blackline, we would call that grit.
yeah.
Which I was actually just reading about this today. It's one of our core values. And grit is the courage to face what's in front of you. And, I find it really interesting. That's a great part of your story. You should never lose that, because it's what produces that grit and that courage to be able to face it. And in business, there's never an end to the things that you need to face.
Right.
I mean, if you're listening, you and I were just talking about image versus brand before we got started, and it's like, don't be deceived by image. We're sitting in a beautiful building, a beautiful property. That doesn't mean that Quarry View doesn't have hardships that they have to deal with or things that you need to face. We all tend to look at people and be like, wow, you've arrived. There is no such thing on this earth. You're talking about 2008. I remember that was the first time that I, in my lifetime, had seen a business that had been around for 100 years disappear. You know, Lehman Brothers was a famous institution, and they're gone. They will not be remembered. And it's like, there are always things that we have to face, but the grit and the courage, if we have that, is what makes it that we can continue to move forward. And I love this part of your story because you hadn't even thought about, like, I don't want to bring it to a God thing, but the fact of the interestingness of the way that was brought about. You were not thinking about brand building. You were not thinking about business development. You were not thinking about these things. But this hardship was really a blessing because you had to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our brand was terrible anyway. I mean, maybe we should say the image.
Yeah.
You know, the image was terrible. We did keep some of our old signs and our old logos. Oh gosh, it's so bad. But, yeah. No, it was.
Well, you guys have definitely. Your brand looks pretty good, so
thank you. Yeah.
So you made that shift, and then you started to, you did that dairy barn that you say you had no business doing. So then, just fast forward for me a little while, and what are the projects that you're doing today? Like I'm looking at this mortise and tenon. I'm looking at this beautiful timber work in here. Which is all real, right? I mean, I know we joked about that earlier, but like it's all real.
It is, yes.
Yeah. And when I say real like that, I mean with the old world craftsmanship. They're literally doing it the way that it was done.
Correct.
100 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's impressive. So what are the projects that you're doing now across multiple states?
Yeah. I mean, today, we're a general contractor. And we get to be involved with more legacy projects is how we like to think about it. Buildings.
I love that.
Buildings that, the same way Joseph Espenshade built this property in a way that would last for generations.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff we love doing.
And
when you look at what our ancestors did, the kind of materials they used, what lasted, what stood the test of time, sometimes in the interest of progress, we actually regress. When you lose sight of, some of those buildings that are still here today and how they did them. But so we just try to stick to things that, there's a lot of synthetic stuff around today. There's a lot of, drywall everywhere, But really, I guess, as far as the markets that we operate in, we do a lot of restoration, adaptive reuse, very similar to our campus here. We get to do a lot of heavy timber, mass timber projects. The mass timber market's still newer for us, but we have done a few, and we're really excited about the potential that has.
I've seen some of the projects on your website.
Yeah.
They're pretty impressive.
Yeah, so that's a trend is gaining a lot of momentum in the U.S., which is really, really exciting. And we also do some a little more straightforward commercial projects, but do a lot of hospitality work, like event venues, boutique hotels, But we just try to stay away from anything that's too cookie cutter,
Right.
Like I said, more of those legacy projects that people have an old barn, they want to turn it into an event space, or we're working on some boutique hotels right now. That's sort of a creative approach to.
So your clientele really is people who understand old world craftsmanship and desiring to be a part of building something that is going to be a legacy building rather than. Like you talked about sacrificing things for progress. It's more about the quality of the build than it is the speed of the build. Not that you don't maintain schedules or anything like that, but
right.
But you're not going to the schedule does not trump for you the quality of work.
That's correct. Yeah. I think you summarized it better than I did probably. But and the reality of that is it's not a cheaper way to build.
No.
And I understand, there are economic reasons why the construction industry is what it is today. And I certainly realize that there's realities there people have to face. But I do believe that there is an aspect of it as well, is that I believe our buildings oftentimes reflect kind of the soul of the nation, right? Our architecture reflects the soul of the nation. And when you look at how some of these beautiful buildings, the kind of detail that are put into the thought, the intentionality, and compare it to some of the stuff that gets put out today, I think in some areas we have regress, with that. And, just like I just think art, building's a form of art, and it does reflect the soul of a nation. And we love doing things where, there is heart, there's soul put into it.
Absolutely.
And it actually is something that people walk into and they're like, man, this space is just warm, it's inviting, and people can appreciate a space. So it's very rewarding. We get to be involved with some really cool projects, and it's been an incredible blessing.
So I'm just curious, you're talking about this, and it's really an interesting thing to talk about in the time in the history of the world that you and I are in. I'm probably a little older than you. Having grown up in the time that I was in, I can remember seeing some things go from one thing and change to another as far as the types of projects, the way that they were done. I feel like our culture and everything right now, there is this hunger for authenticity. There's this hunger for quality because we've experienced, I was just talking with someone about AI the other day and talking about how that's going to affect certain things that we're not going to know if it's real or not real, and how much more value things that are real are going to have. And so it's like when you're talking about legacy builds, when you're talking about the quality, why do you think that matters so much? And I love how you talk about it reflects the soul of the nation, which I would agree with, but I'm encouraged when I say that, because just like in life, I think that there are periods of my life where I was not focused on being a better me. I was just focused on getting more. Wow, I didn't know we were going to do this thing where I was going to be honest. But the more that I went after that, I'd come to this realization of what brought me fulfillment and satisfaction and purpose. And that was not being fake, not being going after that, going after the progress and sacrificing the quality. And so my life changed where it was like, now it's like, I would rather have less than, but have the best of.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And well, why do you think that's something that, I mean, maybe you don't agree with this, but I feel like the soul of our nation is having a reflective moment, just like I did when I was younger, where it's like, I'm seeing clients that are like, all right, well, I only have this much of a budget, so then maybe I need to make the building smaller so that I can maintain that level of quality, which people didn't used to talk that way.
Yeah.
It was like, how big can we make it?
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. There is certainly a high demand for this type of
well, I mean, come on, you're going into multiple states, so
yeah.
I
I think to your point, with AI and just having lived through certainly quite a few decades of cheap products being pushed, and people start realizing that, it costs the same to build something twice as it might be half the cost, but if you build it twice in 20 years, or you do it right one time, it lasts for 20 years, So it's, some of that is not even just economics. It's just having enough of foresight to say, well, yes, it's going to take investment, but then I don't have to rebuild it in 10 years, and let's build it for our grandchildren instead of just thinking my lifetime, because we live in a microwave society, we really do. And
that's a good way to put it.
And, but I think there's certainly renewed interest in more of that, building legacy buildings and thinking more long-term, than we certainly see it in the kind of projects that are coming in. But in general, the current younger generation, they really, really value that authenticity, and they're looking for things that are real. Social media and all of that has also created this, so much fake that people just want things that are real. And
Well, I totally agree. I think not only, I actually believe personally, we're made for what's real. Like when I was born, I was made with a predetermination. I'm probably not saying it right. There's probably a better way to say that, towards wanting what's real. I mean, nobody wants what's fake.
Right.
I mean, the reality is, if you like a good whiskey, then you don't like a non-alcoholic whiskey. You want the real thing. I mean, if you want, a real type of car, you want that car. You don't want a knockoff. You don't want to, I love watches. I don't want a knockoff. I want the real thing, and I want that real thing because I want that quality. I want that legacy. And I think when we go after those things and when we demand that as businesses, because it's a decision to decide to build legacy on both sides. I think it's a decision by the client and the builder.
Correct.
Because as a builder, you have to say, well, you know what, we might not be able to grow as fast as we want to, but we want to maintain X. And I always get a little frustrated when when I watch businesses and they're like, well, we want to make this many millions next year. It's like, if you're just looking at the numbers and you're going after the numbers, that's going to affect the way that you get there.
Right.
And if the way that you get there affects your values and what you believe, and it changes your values, then is it really worth it?
Right.
I mean, I would say no. And I'm sitting here in a legacy building that has been, what was the word you used, the type of construction, a reuse?
Adaptive reuse.
Adaptive reuse. Like, so you've adapted the building and you're reusing it, but this is the part, literally behind my camera here, I'm looking at a brick wall that I know is not a new brick wall.
1875.
And now it has been adapted. This is for a different, and it's beautiful. This is art that we're looking at here. But I'm looking at this wall that the masonry has been, repointed and cleaned up and strengthened, but it's already built on a foundation that is solid. And that is the thing that you guys are really doing that I see is you're highlighting stuff. And if we can, this is the way that we should build. These are the things that we want to be about. The trades truly are a great vocational career. And they're a great vocational career because we're building things like this that people live in. I mean, we cannot live the lives that we want to live without encouraging people to be a part of learning these trades, learning carpentry, learning electrical, learning plumbing, learning these things. And that's another thing that we didn't really talk on a whole lot, but you guys are, when I first noticed you guys, it was because you were do you do it like once a year where you actually bring kids into your barn out here and you have like introducing them to the trades?
Yeah. It's one of my favorite events of the year. It started probably back in 2017, where we started with just kids of the team, and just did an event around Christmas where they'd come in and just spend the day making whatever they wanted to make. And sometimes it was just
giving a little bit of your childhood birdhouse building to other people.
Oh yeah. Sometimes it was, the one year we built we call it a Quarry View Junior's house. And it still is over at Ben's house today, used as a chicken house now, but,
that's awesome.
We built it out of scrap that we had from, leftover from projects. But last year we partnered, with a local organization where they, brought kids in that were from underprivileged, areas and just, kids that don't have that opportunity. And it's amazing, like literally seeing the lights come on.
Yeah.
And these kids, they'll come in sometimes with a nonchalant attitude of, I don't really want to be here. Mom signed me up for it, whatever.
Yeah.
But it is almost every single one of them. Once you get them started, using a tool that's safe, like a sander or whatever, and you sand the edges off of a piece of wood, the satisfaction that they get out of it it's very life-giving being a part of it. And just, you never know, what that might spark. Because, I believe that having work that you have pride in and having work that's fulfilling is a huge part of a person being able to, live a life that's, not as free of depression and, things that come with that. But having fulfilling work is vital. And
I agree.
And you just never know with, having an event like that, what it might spark in a young child. So we love doing it. We've planned to keep doing it. It's been growing every year.
Wow.
And it's a lot of fun.
That's pretty cool. Well, we've reached that point of the podcast where I want to ask you a question. And so this one's a little bit more personal, but I personally believe that we really grow a lot from acknowledging our mistakes. Matter of fact, I would say, and I know I probably sound like a broken record, but if we don't look at our mistakes and acknowledge them, then we are doomed to repeat them and not to have learned from them. And we talked about in the beginning with spreadsheets and how we track things specifically in the trades and in construction. If you don't look at where you've messed up or where you've made a mistake, then you will continue to repeat it. You said, where's the money? I mean, that's the reality of it. And so that's why I think it's really important. And I also think it's really important to be true to what it is to be brand building. We're not here to build your image. We're here to communicate your brand, which is your reputation. It's who you are.
Right.
And so in that regard, wow, I've really built this up for you. Levi, what is a mistake that you have made that you would be willing to share with our listeners that they might be able to learn from so that they don't have to make that same mistake to learn it?
Yeah. It's a great question, and one that certainly was a little humbling to answer. But I would say one of the things we had to learn is how to treat our employees right. And, we just didn't know what we didn't know in the beginning.
Yeah.
And we started our business. We had this expectation that, anybody that we hired should be willing to work 80 hours like we were willing to. And we just had no respect for their lives, their time, and their desires, really.
Yeah.
And we expected everyone to be exactly like us, know. And, I think with that, there were certainly some people that didn't have a great experience working with us.
Yeah.
And when you look back at that, the best thing you can do is just learn from it and not repeat it. And you certainly come to realize over the years that for us to grow, I might be good at building something, but if I don't learn how to treat people right, we're never gonna have a business that's bigger than the founders, right?
Yeah.
And really, so we've learned a lot of valuable lessons with that, and just realizing that we don't actually need people like us. We need people that are really good at something, and they want a place to be able to foster it, and they want a place where they can grow.
Yeah.
But they don't need to have the same sort of risk appetite, the same kind of even entrepreneur spirit.
Yeah.
They might, really enjoy carpentry, and they want to stick to doing carpentry, and that's awesome, and just making sure that we have a role like that fits it, and just the basics of it, and I certainly I love my parents, love my dad, and one of the things he taught us well was work ethic. Like that, we had that foundation, and I don't think we couldn't have done this without that. But poverty does interesting things to people, and growing up in poverty, my dad, the way he tried to fix it was by sort of taking advantage of people, and he kind of left a trail of broken relationships because of that. And you might think, well, you saw that, you'd want something different, but the reality is that you typically tend to repeat what you saw.
Yeah.
Sometimes often not
Me
intentionally,
too.
but I think that just kind of we had to be willing to take a close look at some of our motives and what we were living out, and realize that there was some things there, just my belief, but I believe, being born again, believing in Jesus, that means that you can break those things off in your life, and it doesn't have to repeat, doesn't have to be a generational thing. And, we had to acknowledge that and say, this is not going to be repeated in our family, and, learn from those mistakes. And we're still not perfect. I mean, we've certainly made our fair share of mistakes with company culture and, fostering a good environment. But, just working hard at having a place where you give people grace, and, we don't want our employees to feel like they're just a number. We want them to be proud of what they're doing, and to feel like their voice matters, and what they do matters.
Well, what a phenomenal answer. I think that's probably one of the most honest and real answers that I've gotten to that question. And like, you just fully embrace that. If that's the way that your company is, and that's you are going to continue to grow, because that right there, being able to look at and acknowledge and bring our mistakes into the light is when we remove the power from them that they have over us, and then we have the power over them, and we have the ability to overcome them. And isn't
Yeah.
that what it's about? I mean, we're full of ourselves if we're saying, well, I don't make mistakes.
Right.
I mean that's just a lie. It's just not true. And the reality is it's not about making mistakes, and even the generational thing that you talk about from your father. Listen, here's the deal. I have generational things from my father that I need to overcome. It doesn't make him less than a father.
Right.
Just like my son will have generational things that he needs to overcome for
Yeah.
me.
That's correct.
And it doesn't make me less than a father. And the reality is when I'm deciding to break off the generational things that I have and my son is, then each generation continues to grow and improve
Right.
and get better. And that's what we want to be about. And we need to go after that. I mean, well, and just to talk about this, you might not believe the way that Levi does about being born again and about Jesus having that in your life, but let's just talk about something from a practical standpoint. I mean, I do. I believe that same thing. Yeah. But I have a friend who he was an alcoholic, and I just want to touch on this related to generational things, because a lot of people brush that off and they call it a biblical statement. But the reality is it's real, no matter who you are.
Right.
We have generational stuff that we need to deal with, and it really doesn't matter what you believe, but it's real and it works. And so I have a friend, he was an alcoholic when he was younger, really struggled with it. He's been sober now for 30 some years, but his son automatically, and there's science behind this, had a predisposition to becoming an alcoholic. I didn't even realize that, but there's science behind it. And so, his son then struggled with it because he didn't think anything about it, and he went right into it, and it was like there was something in the genetics of what that was that affected him. And it's like that's a reality. You can Google it and look it up. The statistics of if your parents were alcoholics, how much more likely it is that you will end up being one. And in that regard, that is just to signify how hard it is to overcome generational stuff. I'm trying to be clean here. I would use a different word. But generational stuff moving forward and the importance of it, but how difficult it is to do. The only way that you can overcome that is to do what you just did, where you're going to be honest about it.
Right.
Because if we aren't honest about it, then we actually don't even know about it. And again, this is funny how it ties back to your one thing. Again, with spreadsheets, if we're not measuring stuff, then we don't know where we are.
Right.
It's literally like getting in the car and going on a road trip. And nowadays you have a GPS, but for some of you who grew up when I did, there was a thing called a road atlas. And if you didn't have that, you really had no idea where you're going other than what you knew. And when you would get beyond that, you had no idea where you were going, and you could end up going in circles.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, self-awareness is one of the greatest gifts that you can receive or give, or mostly receive. And
Yeah.
But yeah, I think too, some people, when they hear, Jesus being born again, their first picture goes to something religious and all of that. But my basic belief is just that it's one of the most beautiful stories ever written, and it is a gift.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing, the only religion, where the only thing you can do is receive it. And if you're somebody that's really just struggling and you're not into the religious stuff, and that's fine. But just know that there is healing, there's victory, there's like all those things, and it's literally just a gift.
Yeah.
It does require sacrifice, it requires a giving up, but if the results of living, I guess I'm getting kind of deep with the
that's all right.
that maybe, but if the results of living like the world are leaving you feeling miserable, then why not receive it, one of the best gifts and actually go down a different path, So that's been, our journey from growing up Amish, which is mostly just a religion. Just because you're Amish, they would be predominantly, still a Christian church, but just because you grew up like that doesn't mean that you actually are saved or have made that commitment. It's more just it's a lifestyle, it's a culture, and all that. So too much to get into in this podcast, probably, but that was a huge part of us learning how to treat people right. Is actually making that commitment ourselves, and which led to making changes as well, and are no longer part of that that community, but I have tremendous respect for
Yeah.
how I grew up and for what that community does well. You know, they certainly stick together well. There's a lot of values that I certainly want to continue for my family.
Yeah.
I have tremendous respect for it. But for us, it did mean, making some changes, and there's certainly a lot of victory that came with it as well. Then.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's awesome. Well, at this point in the podcast, I just want to say this to you because there's this question kind of rolling around in my head, and it's going to take us in a different direction. And so, if you don't want to hear anything about God, or you don't want to hear anything about Christianity or anything like that, then hey, thanks for joining us on the line. But I'm going to ask Levi some questions here because I'm curious of your thoughts on this, because I think your origins give you an interesting take. Because I like you. I like you, but that's not what I was saying. As well as you, I believe that Jesus came and died for me, but I don't like religion.
Right.
And matter of fact, I think religion, I don't know if it has a place in Christianity. And so I'm going to share with you what I think, and then I would love your thoughts. And they could be totally different than mine. That's what makes this awesome, is we don't have to agree with one another.
Right.
And I know this is really dangerous. I've never done this on the podcast, but you leaned really into this, and I gave you an out. If you don't want to hear it, you shouldn't be listening right now. If you're still listening, you better stop. But the reality is, when I look at religion, I personally believe that is not what Christianity and Jesus is about. I believe Jesus is about a relationship with him. I believe that he wants to be in relationship with us. And religion, I feel like, is when we put a structure on something, and I actually believe that religion is when we take the relationship out of it.
Right.
And so, and that is something that, listen, we're here in Lancaster County, and we were joking and laughing. And if you're from Lancaster County, you can joke and laugh about the Mennonites, the Amish, the Baptists. I can't. Baptist is more of a Southern thing, but the reality is we have a lot of religion here in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And we have a lot of Christianity. Pennsylvania was actually founded. A lot of people don't know this. I learned this when I got called to jury duty at the Lancaster County Courthouse. Pennsylvania was founded by William Penn, and William Penn was put in jail and tried by the King of England because of his beliefs in Jesus.
Right.
And there came to a revelation, and basically, the reason they were sharing this in a jury thing was that, there was not a jury of William Penn's peers to be there for him. And so they were sharing that. But so the king then, realizing some of the issues, and William Penn desiring to want to be able to have a relationship with God and not be in a religion, the king gifted him the woods, which is what Sylvania means, if I'm getting this right, and hence why we call it Pennsylvania. It meant Penn's woods. All of this to say, that's part of our history. That's why we have all these different things, because the cloisters, the Mennonites, everybody came here because you were able to come here and freely practice your relationship with Jesus. The problem is, as men and women, I use that term but as men, we put these things on stuff, which then makes it religion and not about relationship. And I think that is a relationship with Jesus, in my opinion, will never hurt you, but religion can.
Correct.
And it has.
Yes.
And so I'm sorry, I went off on a rant there, but what are your thoughts on, and listen, I never thought I would ask this. What are your thoughts on religion, Levi, versus relationship?
Yeah, I think you said it pretty well. I think since, going back to the beginning, I believe the beginning was, Adam and Eve in the garden and their fall. Since then, we all want it to be, our nature is to want to be like God, and to be many gods, right?
Yeah.
And that is even sometimes, I think it sometimes is the spirit even behind religion, is you're trying to put God in a box, or say, hey, this is the way we're going to do it, or just control. And totally agree that relationship is really where it's at, and that is Yeah, it's just once you experience that and you realize that you don't have to, you don't have to, follow these rules or follow that rules, but literally just, I still believe that the Word of God, the Bible is our
Yeah.
is our guide, and I think, there's still
I agree with that.
there is there, that's where you can go for the source of truth,
Yeah.
and always I believe always reconciling what you're experiencing in that relationship with what the Word says, and but I've just found tremendous freedom in that. I've found, when I think back to 10 years ago, when there's really 11 years ago is when that transition happened, and just how much has changed, and just knowing that you don't have to walk around in misery. You don't have to, you get to walk in peace. You get to walk with joy. Hey, life still happens. You still get hit. You still.
But that's what real peace is about. Life still happens, and you can have peace in the midst of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think as it relates to business too, having that as and just realizing that what we have is not ours really. Like God is the CEO, and this is all of his. Like, he's a shareholder here, and if something really bad happens, a really bad project, and we lose it all, then it's not the end of the world. I mean, our reward is not what we have here, but it's really that perspective takes some of the pressure off of even the risk sometimes that you take as a business owner. And
well, there's a story about that. It's called Job, also pronounced Job, and he lost it all.
Yeah.
But his God was able to bring it all back in double.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think that's something where, if we're going after what we believe God has called us to, in some cases we might be called to some real hardship. But when you have a relationship like that, you can face that and go through it. And what I can say is, I'm not saying, I've prayed for people and asked that people be healed, and they weren't. The reality is, it was my desire, my expectation, and my point being, I believe that the Lord, whatever it is that he has for you, is what's best for you.
Yes.
And it's worth that. And when you enter into that relationship, then you get to experience that, and it actually gives you the peace that where you are and whatever your hardship is, and I do not say this lightly, please, you can have peace, but only if you're in that relationship.
Correct.
And so, I mean, and that is something that I can't even put a dollar value on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes those I do believe that God wants what's best for us.
Yeah.
But I mean, not just for, I mean, he wants to be worshiped. It's not just so we can be happy, and,
right.
Ultimately he wants to be worshiped, but he's a father. And like you said, he gives good gifts, and he wants what's best for us.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like it talks about in Romans, all the very things that you're going through are building that character. So when he does elevate you, it doesn't all come crumbling down. And I think there's many occasions like that when I think back to when a certain project didn't go through that we wanted or whatever. I feel like there's protection there. It's like we weren't ready for it. We weren't equipped for it. We were in over our heads, and what might have been a disappointment was actually for our own good too.
Yeah.
And that perspective has always helped us to just walk in faith and be like, well, when the time is right and when we're ready, and the next project that we get to have a lot of have a lot of pride in, will come our way, and always make sure to give him the honor for everything good that does come. So
that's really good. I really appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate what you guys are doing, because I believe that and listen, guys, if you're listening, you don't have to believe what Levi and I believe, but the reality is that the practicals about it, quality work, building legacy, caring about the next generation, those are things, regardless of what you believe about religion or Christianity or Jesus, those are the things that they work. They work, and they're I believe that we're made to be that way. And when we're not that way, there's a reason that we call it being fake, because it's not the way you're made to be. And so I so appreciate what you guys are doing for our industry with how you are bringing, and I love it because you're not shoving your faith and your beliefs down people's throats. You're doing your job, living out your values, and you're letting the Lord do the rest.
Yeah.
And so I so appreciate the quality with which you build. I mean, I love, it's not my first time in this room. I wish you guys could really get a picture of it. I love sitting in this room, seeing your quality. I've been on your website. I've seen your projects. Thank you for investing in that way, because you could make more profit.
Right.
But you choose to build a certain way because you're making that choice and the client is. And I've operated businesses. I know what it is when you're presented with those times where you need to decide to do it right at your cost. And when you know, your choice is, well, we could do it this way and no one would know.
Right.
And we would still maintain our profit margin, or we can do it right. And honestly, that's always the best way to do it, because it always comes out.
Right.
It always comes out. It might not be today. It might not be tomorrow. It might be 10 years from now, but it will be revealed.
Yeah.
And you can't run from that. And so that's an important thing. So
Yeah.
thank you for what you guys are doing. And so in your businesses out there, as you guys are listening to this, be about doing things, even though people might never see it. Be about that old world working. Build something that's going to be here 200 years from now. Build into your generation. You know, we're living in a world right now where the trades are devalued. And it's only new that the world in our country is getting about investing in them, talking about them, and going after them. And let's just be really real, because things started to not work. That's why they're doing that.
Right.
And so it's not because we're of noble parts that we're like, oh, the trades matter. No, they matter because we realized if we don't start saying that, we aren't going to be able to flush our toilets.
Right.
So, I mean, that is the reality, and it is far closer than you might think.
Mm-hmm.
So, Levi, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting us here to your corporate office. We so appreciate that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And this has been awesome. I really appreciate what you guys are doing to
Yeah.
lift up the trades. I mean, it's vital for us. In order to do what we do, we need people that actually enjoy working in skilled trades, because especially once you get into more custom things,
Yeah.
you can't just have somebody who wants to show up for a paycheck. But I do want to say too that, we welcome anybody to work
Yeah.
here that has different beliefs. We have a lot of people here that don't believe like I do.
Yeah,
And we don't run an organization where we think we all have to think the same.
I think that's honorable.
But yeah, this has been awesome, Josh. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, hey, step up to the line.